Hello, my deep space darlings. Welcome back. I'm tickled to have you join me for another episode of Mind the Force, a nerdy podcast about Star Wars and mental health. I'm your host, Kristine McPartlin, and today we have for you two very specific but equally devastating tragedies. Tragedy number 1. This is episode 5. Episode 5, Anakin Skywalker, The Beginning of the Fall. Our final installment of character analysis of our Anakin Skywalker trilogy arc. We'll be looking at the last few weeks of Anakin's time as, well, Anakin. His last days of emotional despair and mental manipulation before he busts out the old Youngling Slayer 3000 and lets those brats get what they have coming. Tragedy number 2 is this will be our last episode with our wonderful guest co-host, Matt McPartlin. But don't worry, he's in full form today, and it will be quite the epic send-off. I promise you that. This trilogy arc has been a really fun way to start out the show. It not only gave me a chance to do a deep dive of epic proportions on a huge character, but he touches on so many other main characters that it gives you a whole new perspective on the bigger storyline. It'll be nice to see what I've learned and discussed now coming back in later episodes and other character motivations. It is nice when things come full circle, right? Now, if you've been with me so far, which I know you have, then you know that before we get into the business, we gotta lay down the business. So, to follow this journey with me, please check out the newly minted mindtheforce.com and check out some of our bells and whistles we got going on there. And follow Mind the Force on Instagram and Facebook. And to stay up to date on the latest episodes, please follow, subscribe, and share on all your favorite streaming platforms. You got Spotify, you got Apple Podcasts, you got YouTube, etc., etc. Shoot us 5 stars. Maybe I'll be your best friend. Who knows? And for all big Star Wars thoughts and questions, send me an email at mindtheforcepodcast@gmail.com. And it wouldn't be the business without your friendly content spoiler warning. This podcast is a retrospective on Star Wars characters across all Star Wars content. All films, TV shows, novels, comic books, and video games are up for discussion. If you don't want some aspect of currently released Star Wars content to be spoiled, I would turn around now. You know what it is. Go on. So what is it that we Whovians say when it's time to get the show on the road? Allons-y. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Kristine. We're back for goodness coming in threes.
Oh my goodness. We've made it. It's been a long road. It's been quite a long road, but so satisfying.
I love me some trilogies.
Oh my gosh. And just the amount of Clone Wars rewatching has been glorious.
Yes.
Like I can't. There's just been so many days of just like forgetting to take notes because I'm just sitting there watching the episodes.
Outstanding. Just so outstanding. And you know, for those of you out there that love serialized storytelling, I'll tell you, you won't find much better than the Clone Wars. Between story arcs of lengths of 3 episodes, 4 episodes, but they all weave together in this gorgeous whole and tapestry and just, support so much of those themes that you see in the films as part of the larger universe.
Because you know what you're working towards. It's like you know what the end goal is, and just to watch the complex journey of how it gets there is just it's magical. It's absolutely magical.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it before, just the journey of how all the characters need to get to that end goal, whether they're established characters we know or new characters like Ahsoka. and like more developed characters like Maul, and how they all need to get to this one particular place in order for the next chapters to fall into place. It's just a masterpiece.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
And how much trauma can one person endure in a 3-year span of time?
I mean, between your secret relationship, your Padawan abandoning you, your you're a veteran of war, you're
You
being
lost your mom, you killed some Tuskens, you
right,
got told you were the chosen one, you
you're
declined to be the head of the Mortis universe. Yeah, our man Annie's been put through the ringer,
and the
and
whole time he's being manipulated by a sociopath. It's great. It's
yeah,
a great time for Anakin.
yeah, so intense.
Gosh, so where we left off last time was at the end of the
Mhm.
Mortis arc, and they just come back from Mortis and this whole crazy mystical experience with the father, the daughter, and the son, and the chosen one, and Anakin was exposed to his fate, and then it was taken away, and then you touched on, Matt, that there isn't really too much post Mortis reflection for our heroes.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's one of those pivotal, and why we decided to break this up the way we did. The Mortis arc is such, first of all, it's such a, Dave Filoni creation. Um, but the Mortis arc is such a pivotal inflection point for more, obviously more so for Anakin, but also for Ahsoka and Obi-Wan. I mean, Ahsoka dies. That's a foundational event for everything that happens to that character after, with the Morai, and the essence of the sister being put into Ahsoka, and now it's happening in the series. And then for Obi-Wan's journey, his relationship with Qui-Gon, and his relationship with the Force, and the Jedi Order, they all have these deeply spiritual moments during the Mortis arc. And you could have done a post Mortis arc on the Mortis arc,
Right?
where they just reflect on all the events that have happened, instead of this very brief 2-minute period of denouement at the end of the Mortis arc, where they reflect on the experience that they've had, and they all chalk it up to visions and delusions, and I guess the Star Wars version of a fever dream. But what I really would have loved to have seen is the impression of the Mortis arc on all of the other peripheral characters in the Clone Wars. And how would Yoda have assessed the Mortis arc? And how would Mace Windu have assessed the Mortis arc? And what was Palpatine's view of the Mortis arc? While they've got their investments in keeping the Republic alive, or in Palpatine's case, playing both sides against each other. And how would Mortis have disrupted their plans to keep things on track? And you never get that. And so, for the sake of plot, our heroes have moved on. They've left Mortis behind them. They've reconnected with the clone army, and it brings us back to the essence of the Clone Wars, which is preventing the Confederacy of Independent Systems from causing disruption, taking down the Republic, winning the Clone Wars, and getting access to secret hyperspace lane routes, which is the basis for the Citadel arc, which immediately follows the Mortis arc. But man, if you could do a little more retconning, or a little episode insertion into this period of Clone Wars, we're just about midway through the Clone Wars arcs, the series arc. Would have loved to have seen that, but maybe that story will be told in a comic book one day by Marvel or Disney. But for now, we'll just have to fantasize about what all of our other characters thought was going down in Mortis, and how it affected the Chosen One in his journey to be a better Jedi and a better husband. And what was Padme's view of the Mortis arc? I didn't even touch on Padme, but what did
Right?
Padme think about Mortis? It's like her husband, who has all this power, was basically being offered godhood, and he turned it down, which has
Yeah,
got to make a spouse feel pretty good.
Right? Or maybe it was one of those things where, like, Anakin just, like, left it at the office. He's like, I don't feel like talking about it."
Anakin leaves a lot at the office.
Right?
There's a lot left unsaid in that marriage, that's for sure.
That is that is for sure. Um, but as you said, they move pretty steadfastly, into the Citadel arc, which I always enjoy because, I mean, it's just a great adventure story for what, like, 2, maybe 3 episodes, and I love that we get a big chunk of Anakin with Captain Tarkin,
Mhm.
who anyone who knows Star Wars knows some Tarkin and his squidgy little face. Um, and just interesting to watch them, like, interact on this mission, and I don't know, just to see, like, the seedlings of that ongoing relationship and, like, what they would both, like, come to be and what they would both come to represent, and just seeing them, like, at odds, but eventually come to, like, this, like, general respectful understanding. Just very dark and very, like, foreshadowy.
It is, because in Tarkin, you have Imperial order, right? He's not an Imperial officer yet. He's an officer of the Republic, but he obviously has militant sensibilities, has a very black and white view of the universe,
Mhm.
obviously distrusts the Jedi, but has some sort of a keen, not brotherhood, but he has a keen point of view that aligns squarely with Anakin's worldview of order by any means necessary.
Right?
And the two of them are surprisingly simpatico on their views of order in the universe, and what the two of them believe in. Strangely enough, about the Jedi is that the Jedi, not both of them believe the Jedi have no role as peacekeepers trying to enforce order on the universe. That it doesn't really make sense, and maybe they believe it for different reasons. But they surprisingly agree on this point that the Jedi don't really belong in the roles that they've been put in,
Yeah.
right? As generals, as field commanders, in the war. um, and it's funny, at first you think that Anakin's gonna kind of, like, he flexes on Tarkin a little bit about Tarkin's lack of gratitude at being rescued during this episode.
Mhm.
And then they start flexing on each other about their relationship with Palpatine, which I thought so funny. Like,
Right?
it's not even like a my dad can beat up your dad thing. It's like daddy loves me more than he loves
Right.
you. And they bond over that. Like, oh, he likes you. Well, he likes me too. And he believes in my worldview. No, he believes in my worldview. And they're like, now they have this bond over competing for Palpatine's affection and his favor. And you're like, whoa. And that's, by the way, that's going to be peppered throughout all these seasons that we're going to be discussing today leading up to episode 3, that Palpatine ingratiates himself with each of these characters, believing that they're favored, right?
Yep.
They're the shining star, right? That's how you manipulate people. He's so good at manipulating. Right up until the very end of the Clone Wars run that Lucas was involved in, where he's even manipulating the levers of finance to be controlled
Yep.
by the central government, by the Republic, and nothing gets by Palpatine. And what's one of the richest elements, I think, of these episodes that we're going to talk about today, in Anakin's journey and his downfall in becoming Palpatine's servant, is just how well Palpatine plays him, and not only exploits his attachments to Padme, his attachments to Ahsoka, all the trauma that he's gone through previously, but how he just consolidates power by manipulating people. It's a brilliant thing to see, and it really speaks to the care that they put into Palpatine as not being a one-dimensional villain, but a multifaceted villain who understands what motivates people. And that is among the many tragedies that Anakin Skywalker goes through, that is one of, the most tragic elements, is that he's so impressionable because of his weaknesses and his attachments. And it's no wonder that he fell to the dark side, because Palpatine was just that good at exploiting all of that. Um, but anyway, I digress. But it's the Citadel arc is really it's a great measure of Anakin's steadfastness to get out of that ugly situation they find themselves in on this separatist planet, rescuing Tarkin, getting these plans out, rescuing one of my favorite Jedi Masters, Evan Peel, who also gets captured by the Separatists, who looks like a cross between Quado from Total Recall and Yoda. The Quados? Quados were those creatures that sort of, the Quado's the one who like kind of busts out of
Yeah.
the guy's tummy, right? And he's sort of like this weird Quado Yoda hybrid. And for those of you that love Rick and Morty, by the way, you really should see the recent Quado episode. It's pretty freaking brilliant. They do a whole episode thematically on Quados that are like, bonded to people. But yeah, Evan Peel, and he has this. By the way, I feel like at LucasArts or Lucasfilm back in the day with the Clone Wars, that they introduced an alien character, and I feel like they had languages like accents on a dartboard of what to give that character. And Master Evan Peel has this badass Russian accent, which makes him sound like some Stalinist general or something. And he talks like this in Skywalker. Why don't you go over there? And they all just have these quasi-European accents that just come out of the blue, and you're like, how did they decide,
Right?
to
What's the thought process behind these?
yeah, I mean, before you accuse George Lucas of being a little too tone deaf on race, he's kind of like globally tone deaf when it comes to assigning these accents. Somebody's French, somebody's Russian, somebody sounds Asian. Anyway, but rescuing Master Peel and Captain Tarkin, I still used to say Captain Tarkin, is a great it's a great arc. It's definitely a great arc. And the power conflict between Anakin and Tarkin is interesting. You see the seeds of how each of them views power, and how power is to be used as a force for good. Damn democracy, right? It's obvious that you see Palpatine, the seeds of Palpatine's character here. He has no love for democracy. Palpatine doesn't talk about democracy. He talks about, the military. He's a military strategist. And Anakin's like, yeah, I'm down with that.
Right. They're both figures who a resounding theme is the ends justify the means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
doesn't matter how you get there as long as justice is served and you execute your objective in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's it's a very binary view of the world. It's a really binary view of the world. Very,
Yeah.
very black and white. If you have a hammer, then every problem is a nail. And it definitely aligns with a more militaristic point of
Yeah.
view.
Well, it's interesting in that it's the same point of view, but coming at it, I think Tarkin comes at it from a militaristic point of view, while Anna comes at it from a very orthodox point of view. Because never forget that Anakin was raised in this orthodox religion,
Mhm.
where there's a very clear view of what the Jedi think and how the Jedi feel, and your relationship with the Force is quite black and white. Like there isn't really much room for a lot of color or a lot of context. And so it's interesting that it's like very secular and militant versus very religiously orthodox, but it still comes to the same conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah, what I thought was really telling. There's this one conversation that Tarkin and Anakin have about the purpose of the Citadel. The Citadel is this prison that the Separatists use. That's very well concealed, very well protected. And Anakin and Tarkin actually both agree that they wish that the Republic had the equivalent of a Citadel prison, where they could keep, some of the most dangerous people locked up. And that's like, whoa, that's kind of jarring, right?
Right.
that they both agree in principle that the Republic should have this, this detention facility, and they only wish that they had it. And yeah, there's a lot of great conversation beats between the two of them, where Tarkin speaks about military sensibilities, Anakin speaks about doing what needs to be done, and the seeds of authoritarianism are really built in there. And I know this is about Anakin's mental health and his mental health journey, but it really speaks to the people that shouldn't be given power
Right.
are the people that have these more militaristic sensibilities. Like, you don't give more power to people that already have power, right? Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what this episode plants some really nice seeds of as time goes on, and Tarkin obviously gets promoted over the course of the next few seasons. He leads from captain to admiral. I'm not sure how that happened so quickly. I seem to recall that there was more of a stepping stone in the naval chain of command, right?
Well, I'm sure that I mean, this particular relationship we see developing, I'm sure that has a pretty nice effect on Tarkin's promotions later on, as Anakin very much goes to be second in command
Mm-hmm.
to Palpatine pretty quickly. He's like, "Ah, that guy. I like that guy. Let's promote that guy."
That's right. That's right. But then do you ever find out that does Tarkin know that Anakin became Vader?
Does Tarkin know that? That is a good question. We discussed that earlier, like the people who know
Yeah, who knows? Right.
that the people who
Right.
know that Anakin becomes Vader, and also the people that know about um Anakin and Padme, but that we'll get into more. I don't know if Tarkin knows. That's a good question.
Yeah. Yeah. Reva
I think
knows.
Reva knows. Reva knows because that's like her lifelong journey is hunting him down, which God, I hope they make a show about that or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something, because it's so good. That needs more development. Um, I don't know. That might be worth a quick Google. Does Tarkin Oh yeah, we're live action here. We're um James Luceno's novel Tarkin confirms the Grand Moff has deduced who Darth Vader really was. So of course James Luceno offers it up.
Interesting.
I would have to. I'm not going to read the whole article because we don't got that kind of time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
according to James Luceno, who is a pretty good Star Wars authority, Tarkin does know.
Yeah, Luciano's a genius. He's an
Mhm.
absolute genius. And I'd be remiss if I didn't call out in this episode, as much as we want to focus on our man Anakin's mental health here and his journey and his fall from grace, is how the central villain in this story isn't Count Dooku, although he's in it. It's this guy who's this sort of like Paul Giamatti Skeletor hybrid named Commander Sobek. And I did have a hard time focusing on the episode because all I could hear was Paul, and I know it's not Paul Giamatti doing the voice, but it's like all I could focus on was Commander Sobek's voice, and he has this voice, and he sort of sounds like. And all I could think of was Paul Giamatti at the end of Private Part saying Howard Stern, he's just so like offended, So Sobek's kind of like this kind of goofball who you just know is going to lose in the end, but he makes it a good fight. He actually does make it a good fight in the end when they're escaping with the clones. And fun fact, this is where we lose Echo.
Echo,
Poor Echo.
Thing.
Yeah,
poor thing for future episodes of clones, of which there will be. There will definitely be an Echo episode because Echo went through it.
yeah.
Oh my God, Echo went through it. That poor thing. And then everything with the Bad Batch and his whole journey. Like, there's so many layers to clones. Like, if you haven't watched Clone Wars, you don't know the clones and all of their many emotions between Rex and Commander Cody and Echo and Fives. Oh my God, Fives. He tried so hard to expose the conspiracy.
Fives, Rex, Echo, Tup, Hardcase, Dogma, Oddball.
Oh my God, 99.
99, Ringo,
99.
Jesse. I found myself just jotting down more than I normally do the names of all the clones, because you know what, by this stage of the Clone Wars, you're really now you're starting to get attached to the clones,
right?
And their sense of individual identity. And Anakin, of course, feels a deep sense of obligation
Right.
to protect the clones.
Right.
Which
Oh,
we'll get into later as we talk about Anakin contrasted with Pong Krell, who is the opposite of Anakin
oh my gosh, that guy was a dick.
and who treats the clones like disposable income. But like that, that has an effect on our man,
Right.
right? That has an effect on Anakin, I think.
Right. I saw the most heartbreaking meme. A good friend of mine who is actually one of our future co-hosts here on Mind the Force, he shares a lot of like great Star Wars memes with me. And one said it was like a fan theory that said that Vader like kept hiring Boba Fett as like a bounty hunter for missions because he missed Rex's voice. I was
Oh
like,
my god.
"Oh my god, stop."
That's
It's like,
great.
"Don't do that to me. I can't
Yeah.
take it."
Oh, that's really funny.
I was like,
That's really funny.
"Oh." That
Darth
would be
Vader.
delightful.
Darth Vader's sentimentalist. That's great.
Right? I
Oh,
mean, he shows the little feelings, like, in the Ghost Prison episode or the Ghost Prison comic you were just showing me, where he trashes the temple because he still can't regulate his emotions and learns the council was lying to him about something, or when he visits Padme's grave as Vader. I mean, there's so much sentimental stuff going on.
yeah.
Or when he tries to bring Padme back to life. Like,
Yep.
everything he's
Yep.
doing, he may be a very burnt up man in a tin can with breathing problems, but, Anakin Skywalker's still in there, feeling all the feels.
Yeah, I have to tell you on rewatch, we're talking about a very compressed period of lore. This period post modus modus post mortis arc up until the end of Revenge of the Sith. A lot of compressed lore in there, but what you find during the Clone Wars and during this period of compressed lore is Anakin's relationship with the Jedi Council deteriorates. It just never gets better.
No.
And I feel like Mace is driving a lot of that. Yoda's being kind of passive, but like Anakin, hand over fist is just doing everything he can to endear himself not only to the galaxy, but more importantly to the Jedi Order. And he just gets rebuffed at every turn when it comes to, earning more of their trust. And and I think that speaks to Mace's influence on the council. And I think one thing we both agreed on is the that Mace's constant putting down of Anakin is a theme throughout these next 3 seasons of the Clone Wars, deep into episode 3, that Mace never trusts him.
Oh, definitely not.
And it's so like you even hear it like right up until episode 3. Mace says, I don't trust him. And Anakin knows it. He knows it.
Right?
And nothing he does between his heroics at the Citadel or any of the other story arcs that we're going to talk about today never endear him. And what that's got to do to, you know, to one's psyche, to know that it's a very debilitating and psychologically debilitating thing when your elders don't trust you and
Yeah.
you feel like you've done everything you can, bent over backwards to meet their high standards. And in spite of all of that, it's not enough. And the story that you mentioned earlier was through Dark Horse Comics. They did a story arc around Darth Vader, which was Darth Vader and the Ghost Prison. And in this story, which takes place in the immediate aftermath of episode 3, it comes out around 2012, 2013. 5 issue story arc from Dark Horse Comics. It's pre-Disney. Marvel doesn't have the rights to, do comic book publishing yet. And in this story, there's a coup against Palpatine. It's an immediate coup. Happens within the ranks of the military. Palpatine is exposed to this toxin that ends up killing probably hundreds. And just by sheer force of will and his connection to the dark side of the Force, Palpatine barely survives, but he's mortally wounded by this thing. And Darth Vader is tasked with getting Palpatine to safety, and then building an army that can take Coruscant back from the coup plotters within the military. And long story short, Darth Vader goes to this place called the Ghost Prison, which was a secret Jedi prison where they kept rogue elements from the Separatists and the Jedi. And Darth Vader learns that the Jedi kept the Ghost Prison secret from the rest of the Republic. And upon finding out that the Council lied to him about what was happening to his prisoners, they were all sent to this ghost prison, unbeknownst to Anakin Skywalker, who captured like half the prisoners that are in this jail. And the comic book, first of all, the artwork is beautiful in this book. But he goes as Darth Vader when he finds this out through a holo recording that the Jedi Council were keeping this secret from Anakin. He goes ape. He tears up the Jedi Temple where he finds the recording. He calls them traitors, and this was always about betraying me and betraying the Republic. And he has this young Imperial lieutenant with him who's observing all this as well. And Vader's like, the Jedi were, they were duplicitous. They were, unbeknownst to many, they were really the traitors of this conflict. And it's such a thematically, I know it's not canon, but still thematically a perfect story to encapsulate the distrustful nature of the Jedi and just how much that builds on Mace's distrust of Anakin and the Council's distrust of Anakin. And just how they just never recognize him. We talked about the Mortis arc. My goodness, he's called the Chosen One. And he even declines godlike power to be the steward of Mortis. And even in spite of all that, they don't give him any of the respect that he's entitled to, or the support or the mentoring, right? They keep him on the outs, and that's going to take a toll.
Right, and it only gets worse.
It just gets worse.
It just gets worse, and I think we would be remiss at this stage as I think there's two big upcoming points that really just absolutely diminish his trust in the council. Which is, of course, Ahsoka's departure, which I really want to get into, as well as the faking of Obi-Wan's death.
Yes.
So first, at this point, his relationship with Ahsoka is probably the most stable relationship in his life. Like, probably even more so than his marriage at this point. And actually, what a story arc that I love, which is not very Anakin centric, but it's very Ahsoka centric, is when she gets kidnapped. And she's on that planet with the other Padawans, and like is being hunted by those reptilian creatures whose name escapes me at the moment.
Oh, the Trandoshans.
Thank you. Oh,
yeah.
This is why you're the master, Matt. Yes, they're being hunted by the Trandoshans, and she just like handles the whole situation. Like, she's able to rally these other like captured Padawans. Chewbacca shows up, which is my favorite part of the entire trilogy. I was like, not Chewbacca just got dropped on this planet and he's about to help them mess things up. And that in the end, she comes back and she's like, everything you taught me, I was able to use. Like, you taught me how to survive. You taught me how to take care of myself. And that's a theme with them over and over, that he may be having struggles with his relationship with Padme and his relationship with the council. But I do think that the one thing that, I guess it's Yoda, if Yoda got it right, was that giving him a Padawan would be the most constructive thing for him. Because I think of all the relationships he couldn't see how to save, like he didn't know how to save Padme, he didn't know how to save himself, he didn't know how to stop all these other things around him. He felt, at least in that point, he was able to control his relationship with Ahsoka, and the fact that he could teach her how to be a warrior. Like, the best thing he could do is teach her how to protect herself. So we see that in the Tales of the Jedi episode where he
Mhm.
teaches her how to defend against the blasters, which is what saves her in Order 66. Cue, like, massive bawling tears. Um, and then the same thing in that episode where the lessons that he taught her about survival and hope and how to be a good leader is what led her to be able to survive and, like, save everyone else and get back to Coruscant. And it's so interesting that he's able to have this very positive focused perspective almost in this, like, big brother parental role, but he can't seem to take his own good advice when it comes to his romantic relationships and when it comes to his subordinate relationships.
Mm.
So maybe it's because he feels an autonomy with his relationship with Ahsoka that he's able to kind of mold it a little bit more, and maybe he feel like he has a little bit more control, whereas he doesn't have control in the other relationships. Like, he doesn't have control over what the council does. He doesn't have control over what Padme does, and he really doesn't have control because their relationship is a secret.
Right. Right.
And and it might just be and, like, he doesn't have control over his relationship with even his relationship with the Chancellor, with Palpatine, because there's that, like, power dynamic, and just that also that desire that I think is a very human desire that I think I've witnessed with a lot of people in a lot of different situations, is, like, everyone wants to be favored by the king. And so, like you said, like, it's that whole pissing contest between him and Tarkin of like, "Oh, like, I'm the Chancellor's best friend. No, I'm the Chancellor's best friend, and he thinks this of me, and I'm so impressive, and blah, 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 because this person in power has deemed me to be so."
Yeah.
So there's always that, like, imbalance of power dynamic between him and the Chancellor.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think that his relationship with Ahsoka is the only thing that he feels he can control, and it's just interesting that that's the one that's going the best.
The thing I love about these conversations we've had, it's the what ifs. It's the alternate timeline. It's the alternate, history. And what if Ahsoka never leaves?
Right?
And obviously, Lucasfilm did some very nonlinear storytelling, and everything gets, kind of shoehorned in and backfilled in with the Clone Wars, and we never even knew who Ahsoka Tano was up until
Right? Mm.
2008 when she gets introduced. 3 years after Revenge of the Sith. But if she never leaves, does that the strength of that relationship save Anakin's soul? And I'm not so sure, because he spends so much time being validated by Palpatine and groomed by Palpatine and manipulated by Palpatine. Does that, does that supersede everything else? Um, so add that to my list of what ifs, like, what if
Yeah.
Ahsoka never left? Like, what if Ahsoka never leaves the Order? What if she puts her braid back on and she jumps back into it? But you raise a great point. You know, the validation that he gets from being Ahsoka's mentor obviously means a lot to him.
Right? It's
But,
it's the
but
only it's his best friend.
yeah,
It's even someone who I think he feels like he never can tell her directly about his relationship with Padme, but, like, she knows, like, this is someone important. It's
yeah,
almost like she's not in on the secret, but she's almost in on the vibe. Like,
yeah,
this is somebody who I can probably of all the people I can show myself to, like, she's probably second to Padme.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for
Yeah.
sure. It's yeah, it's funny, if she never leaves, could his fall been prevented? And I don't know. Yeah, like, I really don't know. That's a tough one.
I think that's it's one of the many things we see her grapple with in the Ahsoka series.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's definitely a question that her character has dealt with is, like, "What if I didn't leave? Like, could I have changed things? Could things have been different? Like, were you always destined for this? Am I destined for this?" Like,
yeah. What is fate? No fate but
Right.
what you make, right?
Right. Um,
We need a Stuart Smalley to just, do affirmations with Anakin every morning and say,
mhm.
"Gosh darn it, Anakin, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like you." I think Al Franken deserves a serious guest spot host. Yeah, or guest spot in one of those Clone Wars episodes.
Right? Just to make Anakin feel good about himself.
Yeah, an alien version of Stuart Smalley. I don't know what species that would be. I don't know if it'd be a Rhodian. I don't know if it'd be immune. I don't know what, maybe
Maybe be
a
a lovable droid.
there you go. He
There
could
you
be a
go.
lovable therapy droid. I love it.
um,
Better help for Jedi.
right. I mean, even Jedi need a hug every now and again.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
It's clearly not enough emotional support. I think
No,
that's one of their biggest fallouts.
yeah, no doubt. No doubt. There's no good therapy outlet for the Jedi, that's for sure.
No. And especially not when the Jedi Council go around, faking people's deaths, which is an excellent segue into the next fuck up that the council serves up to Anakin
Yeah.
is when they fake Obi-Wan Kenobi's death so that Obi-Wan can go undercover as bounty hunter Rocco Hardeen so that they can uncover a plot to kidnap the Chancellor. And one of the main selling points of this death faking is that Anakin has to believe it so that everyone else will believe it. So they have a bounty hunter sniper shoot Obi-Wan, which is so unrealistic. Don't know why Anakin didn't question that more. Um, and they fake Obi-Wan's death, and Obi-Wan goes undercover as this bounty hunter in prison, hooks up with Cad Bane and what is the other lovely bad guy's name? Eval, something Eval. And like that whole thing ensues. And Anakin is just adamantly hunting down Raka Hardeen the entire time.
Moralo Eval.
Thank you, Moralo Eval.
Yeah.
Honestly, he says his name so many times in like he speaks in the third person. I'm really upset I forgot it.
That's right. That's right.
You will not question Moralo Eval. Another great Eastern European accent coming out of Star Wars. And the whole time Anakin is just like adamantly hunting down Obi-Wan's killer and trying to uncover this plot, force choking people left and right. Just
A lot of force choking going
a lot
on
of force choking,
in
not
these
giving a
seasons.
damn who sees Ahsoka is exposed to a lot of it. She's like, this is all questionable. But I guess but as usual, the ends justifies the means for Anakin. He's like, I will force choke everybody. Everybody I need
Yeah.
to find Obi-Wan's killer.
Yeah.
And then in the end, of course, they vanquish the bad guys and stop the plot to kidnap Palpatine, all of which Palpatine probably orchestrated because he's always pulling the strings. And in the end, Obi-Wan is alive and reveals to Anakin that he's alive. And Anakin's like, why couldn't I know? Like, why was this hidden from me? Why was I lied to for however long? And Obi-Wan's like, well, it was my idea. Like, we had to make you believe it in order for everyone else to believe it. And Anakin just goes wild.
Yeah. Too bad the council didn't trust me. How many other lies have I been told by the council? I mean, it's a
Right?
pivotal, very pivotal episode in terms of his
Right?
relationship with the council.
Even having Obi-Wan question, like, what do you think you know? Like, what do you know is true? And even then Obi-Wan's like, huh, like,
And
sort
and
of
in
plants
and
those seeds of doubt.
yeah, and in the midst of that, which is again back to Palpatine and manipulation and grooming, Palpatine says, it's too bad. Like they didn't tell you about that plan, did they? They kept you on the outs, didn't they?
Mm,
Like you really think that it's not until episode 3 that Palpatine is planting those seeds of distrust. Oh, but they're right there, you know? And
no.
we're not even in, by the way, we're only in like season 4. We're still a pretty, good year or so away from the events of Revenge of the Sith. And
Right?
Palpatine is working it.
Right?
He's working it.
And this isn't, and never forget, like, this isn't new. Like, Palpatine has been at it since Anakin was, like, 10.
Yeah.
So, 13 years worth of, like, grooming and manipulation culminates to his fall to the dark side. It is not a quick game.
Yeah. Yeah. The other there's a boy, he really goes through the ringer on this episode. So this episode arc, it's not just that the council deceives him. It's not just that Obi-Wan deceives him, and it's not just that Palpatine, manipulates him and grooms him. Dooku does a number on him too.
Mm,
So there are multiple opportunities when Anakin faces off against Dooku. And on rewatch, it's interesting to see just how much stronger Anakin gets with each successive conflict with Dooku up until episode 3. And but if you watch the Clone Wars arc on rewatch and you watch things in a linear, order, you see Anakin getting ready to fight Dooku in episode 3 and you're like, "Oh, now I'm here for this." Because what they smartly did was they made Anakin a little more capable with each successive duel, right?
yeah.
So in this episode, he faces off against Dooku, and Dooku is literally fighting him with one hand behind his back. And,
Yeah.
and it's such great body language because it totally puts Anakin in his place. I mean, Anakin holds his own,
It's
but
so good.
Dooku deliberately, you know, lifts up Obi-Wan and says, I enjoyed fighting you. Too bad Anakin was, a quote unworthy adversary, unquote.
Mm,
And I'm like, oh, and Dooku just manages to like stick in that shiv,
right.
just planting the seed. You're not good enough. You're not good enough, Anakin.
And I love those little details that come in because if you learn, because like we'll as we one day do a Dooku episode and like the more we learn about these different characters, to like fight him with his hand behind his back, it's so Dooku because he was actually part of like a royal lineage of his people, and like Count Dooku, like he took his family's title back when he renounced the Jedi. And so he is a count. And so I don't know, it just makes me think of like that regality
Mm,
of like just having this like proper upbringing. And they even talk about his description in the Darth Plagueis novel is like he's very regal. Like he dresses like very clean cut and has like a very clean cut shave and has this presence of somebody who knows like they are like more upper crust. He has a more like aristocratic presence.
yeah.
And so that just makes me think of like a fencer, like having their hand behind their back and like fighting with one arm. Um I love those little details of personality
Yeah.
that comes up
Yeah.
across Star Wars. They're so good at that.
Yeah. And that layer of class,
So
right?
classy the
Right.
whole
The
time.
the ex-slave versus, the regal Count of Sereno,
Mm,
right? So there's class elements there. There's Jedi betrayal elements in there. The two rogue Jedi, the one who stayed within the order, the one who left it. There's a lot of good stuff in there. There's a lot of
yeah.
fertile conflict.
And then I think as somebody who always like looked down their nose at Anakin, that in the end, like Anakin kills him with like Dooku on his knees looking up at him.
Mm, mm,
Right?
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Ugh,
It is the ultimate. Yeah, it
they
is the
never miss a
ultimate
beat.
revenge. It is totally the
Right?
ultimate revenge.
And in that moment for him, oh my, I'm jumping the gun because in that moment is obviously when he realizes everything. In that moment of his death when he's like, I was a pawn. Like this was all like for the sake of like this was all the plot. This was all the plot and I've been Bobo the fool. and,
That's right.
and it was
That's
all
right.
for this. And God, it's poetic. So
Yeah.
tragically poetic.
Yeah, I still can't believe on rewatch and that arc, which spans about 3 episodes of Obi-Wan faking his death. Um, just how much Anakin's aggression is overlooked. I mean, Anakin and Ahsoka go to shake down a bartender for information, an Ithorian bartender, right? The Ithorians, the hammerheads, right? For
Yeah.
for those who love the action figure. And it's funny, if you bought that action figure back in the 70s, you didn't know what the heck an Ithorian was. You'd said, "Oh, it's the hammerhead guy," right?
Mhm.
And the hammerhead, the Ithorians talk through both sides of their mouth. They have these weird gill-like, mouths. They have to wear these translators around the base of their neck. And yeah, Anakin goes into this like seedy bar and shakes this Ithorian bartender down, and Ahsoka's with him, and Anakin force chokes the bartender
In front of everyone.
in front of everyone.
Like, not
Yeah.
giving a damn. Like,
No, it's like, and Ahsoka just like, that's not the first time that Ahsoka overlooks that. Anakin, going back a few episodes, we're jumping around a little bit here, but the Zygerian slave traders that capture Obi-Wan and Ahsoka's people, these Togruta, who are living in this nice, earthy, crunchy, hippie colony island. It's an art.
mhm.
I love how they describe it. It's like it's an artisan colony that's run by the Togruta. So basically, it's like Martha's Vineyard for Ahsoka's people, and they have tons of art. But the Separatists end up showing up, and then the Zygerians show up, and they scoop them all up, and they put them into the slave trade. But Anakin goes into the Queen's court at Zygeria, and he's posing as this other guy, and then he gets found out, and he starts force choking the Queen, and Ahsoka's like right there. I
Right?
mean, I really have to go back and watch and see how many incidences we see of Ahsoka witnessing Anakin's aggression. Red flags abound, and not calling it out and letting it
Right?
go because she's the student. When are you going to call out your right? When are you going to call out your mentor
Right?
as misbehaving or being unethical? Well, that would be right. That would that would
Right?
that would
Like,
take
it happens on a handful of occasions, but it's always, like, such a soft touch.
Mhm.
It's always such a soft touch of just, like, "Master," like, it's like, kinda trying to be like, "Anakin, like, what are you doing?" Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's not
like,
it's not until, and this is why I love the rhythm of our conversation here, because we do jump around a little bit.
What about Star Wars?"
But that's okay. But by the time we get to, pretty deep into the series run, and we get deep into one of the final seasons, and the character of Rush Clovis is reintroduced. And Anakin's aggression, to your point, it's pretty soft aggression until, throughout most of the series. There's a choke here, there's a torture there. But man, you get deep into those last two seasons, and you see Anakin really going to town on Rush Clovis because,
Oh,
backstory, Rush Clovis was Padme's former paramour. He's in league with the Separatists. He left the Republic. He allied himself with the Separatists. He's aligned with the Munes and the banking clan. The Munes were the race that Darth Plagueis came from. And Anakin catches Rush Clovis and Padme in an embrace that's been initiated by Clovis, right? And Anakin has warned Padme about working with him again, and he's made some gestures and overtures to come back to the Republic because he's discovered corruption within the banking clan run by the Munes. And you think the banking clan is just allied with the Separatists only. So nobody trusts Rush Clovis. Anakin most certainly doesn't trust Rush Clovis, but he's jealous of Rush Clovis. And when he catches Clovis and Padme in an embrace, looking like they're about to kiss, wow! I mean,
mhm,
I mean that they really saved Anakin's rage monster for this
for that.
season, for this moment.
Yeah.
Late in
He loses his shit.
Yeah, we're in season 6 at this point. This is only about a 13 episode run in season 6, and they really save it until season 6 for Anakin just to go ape on this guy. And the guy taunts him. He's a very, well-to-do again, it's the layers of like upper class versus lower class, former slave versus aristocrat. Sense of theme here. I think they definitely play that up. And on top of which, he knows that, Padme used to have feelings for him. and he sees this, and he's just I'm sure he force chokes him. I have to go back and watch the episode again. But
Oh, I'm
that
sure, but
but
Anakin wouldn't pass up the chance to force choke
well, yeah,
someone.
that's the go-to move. The force choke is the go-to move, but a lot of force choking, then Clovis, not backing down, not ceding the ground, also knows that he and Padme have feelings for each other. Um, and I'm sure Anakin's aware that, like, I know that you know
Right.
that, right?
I know that you know that I know what
I
you
know
know,
that you know. So
right?
yeah, he's pulling a Ralph Cramden there. So then Clovis, just totally has his number and says, "Why don't you fight me without your special Jedi powers?" And it's just, and one thing you don't see, right? It's just an outright cage match. It's like a fist fight. It's like UFC, Clovis versus Skywalker. Just start pummeling the stuffing out of each other. And
Right. Don't forget, he's still like still an army general. Could probably still kick your ass.
yeah, but I'll tell you what, Clovis gives as good as he gets. He actually hangs in there. I'm surprised he actually that it's even a fight, that it's even
Right?
competitive before Anakin goes to, like, force slamming him against a wall. But they go at it, and you're like, this is savage. And Padme's like, stop it. Stop. Like, at this point, as we've talked about the people that care for Anakin sitting by and watching him display this toxic behavior. Finally,
Finally.
finally, Padme steps in and says, stop it. Not gonna, and basically Clovis gets out of it. But then she and Padme or Anakin and Padme have this really, deep, raw conversation. And Padme's like, I can't be around you anymore. Like, we need this is like a wife talking to her husband. I can't be around you anymore.
Yeah.
And Anakin knows that he's screwed up. He screwed up big time. Like, he let his rage monster out on this guy. And even though this guy Clovis is really a class A scumbag, and he probably had it coming, and no one trusts him. The entirety of the Republic doesn't trust him. Anakin went too far.
Yeah.
But Padme, they're finally using language in that episode where Padme has said, "This is unhealthy. Um, this is toxic." And then, by the way, this is after, Anakin saying, "I demand, right? I demand you not be around him anymore. I demand."
Right? That's
Right?
like the height of Anakin's, well, one of the many heights of Anakin's toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
or hegemonic masculinity, which is a new word that
Love that
we've
term.
learned.
Love that term.
And
Explain,
yeah, no,
explain
where
the
he
background.
starts
Explain the background of hegemonic masculinity, because I'm fascinated by that term.
so there are a lot of fantastic graduate and academic thesis on Anakin out there, and just an examination of his behavior, particularly during his fall to the dark side and his transition to Darth Vader. And I found this one particular paper I really enjoyed, by Joshua Atkinson and Bernadette Calafell, and it's "Darth Vader Made Me Do It: Anakin Skywalker's Avoidance of Responsibility and the Gray Areas of Hegemonic Masculinity in the Star Wars Universe." And it's a really fascinating paper that really just touched on all of the aspects of a term called hegemonic masculinity that Anakin portrays. And the 5 features of hegemonic masculinity are physical force and control, occupational achievement, familial patriarchy, frontiersmanship, and heterosexuality. And the way they break down these 5 features, like, in Anakin's behavior and his personality, are just so spot on. And
Mm,
you're like, "Oh, man, really, there's not a lot of redemption for you in here, my guy. There's really
yeah, yeah.
not a lot of space for you to get out of this one."
It sounds like the Dark Jedi Proud Boys or something. I mean, it's like, really,
Pretty
oof.
much, and it just touches on the fact that, we give a lot of the papers that I read about Anakin, because I mean, never forget that we love Anakin. We love everything Star Wars, or else we wouldn't be here nerding out about it. Um, but you can't say that he's not a problematic character, and I feel like in the prequels, we have this viewpoint, we have a lot of empathy for Anakin. Like, we see how he's being manipulated, and we see all of the factors that make him who he is and, like, lead him to the decisions that he makes. And we know that he's going to be redeemed in the end because at this point we've seen Return of the Jedi and we see his redemption back to the light and that he chooses Luke and the light and he destroys the emperor, quote unquote. But we use that as an excuse. And then all of his, just like the characters do in the show in Clone Wars, we just excuse his behavior again and again. We're just like, "Oh, he just did that." Like, he killed the raiders because he was sad his mom died. He attacked Rush because he loves Padme so much. Like, he just gets excused again and again and again. And it's like two things can be true at the same time. It could be true that Anakin is a complex, multi-layered character who is manipulated very heavily from very early on and groomed and is impressionable a young man with a lot of emotions that are left unregulated because he never received the tools to regulate them.
Mhm.
On the other hand, he force chokes a lot of people and kills a lot of people.
Yeah, yeah.
And where is the ethical line in the sand?
Well,
Like,
yeah, and here's what I love about that episode, because you're watching that, if you come in as an objective viewer, right? And you've never seen Star Wars before, and you get a little backstory, and let's say you tell, so okay, well, these two characters are married, they're living a lie, they've been married for a couple of years. He has this commitment to the order. He's supposed to be this, disciplined disciple of the Jedi Order. She's a disciplined politician, loyal to the Republic. And for the first time in 6 seasons of Star Wars, even and including Attack of the Clones, Padme finally says, "I don't feel safe around you."
took long enough.
Which is what any functional person would say. I don't even want to say functional woman. I just want to say functional person. What any functional person would say in a toxic relationship after witnessing all that rage come out, and she's not going to jump between the two of them because she's like afraid I'm going to get force choked and thrown across the room too, which eventually does happen. Spoiler alert.
Right? Time will tell.
But she doesn't intervene because it's like, what can she do? She's afraid of his power. In that moment, she's really afraid of his power. And for her to finally say, "I don't feel safe," and that episode does a great job of building, because even Yoda and Obi-Wan call out Anakin and say, "There's something about this guy that really sets you off." Like, what, like Yoda and Anakin had this great sit down in that episode. Um, and Yoda says, something about, this Clovis character just riles up your passions. And Anakin has to be like, like he has to lie. He has to, like, I can't believe Yoda doesn't suss out his relationship with Padme.
Right.
I can't
I
believe
mean,
half the council doesn't suss out his relationship with Padme. But
right. Well, and he even has that really well-known exchange with Obi-Wan in this episode, where Obi-Wan comes to him. I don't know if it's before or after Yoda, but pretty much saying like, your feelings for Padme are really like clouding your judgment, and
yeah,
brings up Satine.
yep,
Brings up Satine. He's like, you've met Satine, like, I like used to have feelings for her. Like, you pretty much trying to like say like I know what this is. Like, I can see it without like so much saying it outright, which probably would have been a little more serving at the time. And is trying to say like I understand, but then of course is like, but you have to put those feelings aside, like for the sake of the order, and like all the things that I think Obi-Wan goes on to regret later. But he tries to, I guess, meet him halfway, and just Anakin is just, I think he thinks about it for a second, like, is this a safe space? Is this a safe situation that I can like trust my feelings in? And then he just backs off. He's like, nah, this
yeah,
isn't the time.
yeah. And that whole conflict, I mean, I guess it's not on camera, and I guess, nobody else knows about it, but like that should have gotten Anakin kicked out of the Jedi Order. Like, that outburst should have gotten him
Right?
removed.
Oh,
And then
that could be another great part of our drinking game. You take a drink whenever Anakin force chokes someone.
that's right. That's right.
You take a drink whenever, and you have to do a double whenever Anakin should have been kicked out of the Jedi
Oh
Order.
my god. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, that's crazy.
right?
That's crazy that he's able to get away with that.
Right?
Uh,
Ferris Olin left after someone died, and Anakin can just murder a ton of people.
oh
And
my
at no
goodness.
point does he get kicked out of the Jedi Order.
Yeah, yeah, it's insane. It's absolutely insane. Um, yeah, that's a great arc. That really is a fantastic arc. And Anakin, by the way, Anakin does end up getting proven right about Ferris, not Ferris Olin, about Rush Clovis. Although Rush Clovis gets screwed by Dooku, and
Yeah, no, that whole thing is very sad, and then he
yeah,
dies, and very tragic character. But yeah, no, but Padme makes them take a proper break. Straight up Ross and Rachel style.
yeah,
Said, I think we shouldn't see each other for a while. Um, her head of security, I love the moment where her head of security comes in after they're arguing and is like, "Is everything okay, my lady?" And she just looks at him all teary-eyed and just says, "No." Like in this emotional state, Anakin's just in the room. And Typho's like, "What? This is none of my business."
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's something like that. That doesn't cause a more permanent schism in their relationship. But you
Yeah,
know why? It's because Anakin saves her again, and he saves the
right?
day.
Right.
Oh, you know,
Forgive. I mean, you
oh,
can't help but love Superman when he saves Lois Lane over and
that's
over.
right. That's right. I know. But like,
Yeah,
how many times does Anakin get Padme out of a jam,
yeah,
and she
and
respects
then
him
she
for it?
just right, and then she just respects him, she forgives him, and I'm like,
Ah,
"Okay," like, like, 2 wrongs don't make a right, but it's like, "Oh, but I can't be mad anymore about this other thing because you did this other heroic thing," like, it's almost
right.
like the hero form of love bombing. Like,
Yeah.
I can keep doing wrong over and over
Yeah.
because I'm gonna, like, come and do a big right.
But, we should mention to the listeners that this episode does take place after Ahsoka has already left the Order. So
Oh.
so
I
Anakin's hanging by he's kinda hanging by a thread in terms
Oh
of,
my
like,
god, Ahsoka is gone at this
Ahsoka is
point.
gone at this point, and Anakin is kinda hanging by a thread as far as, like, his relationship stability, and Padme is the only good thing remaining, right? He doesn't trust the council doesn't trust him. He and Padme are going great guns, and then who tells Padme that she should work with Clovis to unspool all this corruption in the banking sector? Palpatine.
Good old
And
Palpy.
he like, you know what? I love it because it's like heads I win, tails you lose. Palpatine, that he knows how to make it work. He
Yeah,
knows how to make the situation work to his advantage so that no matter what the outcome is, he will come out on top. And if Padme ended up running off with Clovis, Anakin would come, back into his arms. If Anakin, feels jealous of the relationship and nothing happens between Padme and Clovis, Palpatine still wins. I mean, it's like no
yep,
matter what, it's engineered so he will come out on top.
no matter what. Like,
Genius.
even with I always wonder with Ahsoka's, like, trial and leaving of the Jedi Order, they never super get into what corrupts Padawan Offie to, like, betray the Jedi Order and then do the bombing and just that whole backstory of, like, how she ended up, like, basically falling to the dark side. I'm like, I'm sure that was Sidious's work too.
Yeah.
Because whether she was exposed or Ahsoka took the fall for it, he won either way.
Yep. Yep.
Same result. First, he took out Qui-Gon, then he took out Ahsoka, like, turned him against Obi-Wan. Also, he could protect Padme. Like, it was just the perfect little taking out the other chess pieces.
Brilliant. Just
Absolutely
brilliant.
brilliant. I mean, that's why I don't know if I've mentioned this enough, to my very devoted listeners, but I'm a self-prescribed Sith. They play the long game, I respect it. They're the chess masters. They're
They
the
are the
chess
chess masters.
masters, moving the pieces on the board, making the magic happen. I got my man Darth Maul with me, sitting right here with his dark saber and his lightsaber
Yeah.
to remind me that you can
Yeah.
do anything you put your mind to,
Yeah.
including take over Mandalore.
Yeah, it's just genius. It's just so genius. And that's the one thing that I don't think gets enough press or attention throughout the Clone Wars series is just how good Palpatine is.
And, like, the bigger picture, like, all the small pieces that add up to the bigger picture. And that's what I think I enjoy now about Favreau and Filoni's retconning, is how they're bringing it all together, like, how the cloning is always at the forefront of the plan. Like, like, how getting the cloning from the Catamandians? Am I thinking of the right word? Yeah, who is the race that makes the clones?
Oh my God. we're both having a brain fart.
Uh, um, the Nemoidians?
No,
No, that's
no.
Catanamoidia. Uh, I watched so much Bad Batch, why don't I know this? Like,
We're getting there. Hold on. Hold on.
oh, wait, I'm gonna feel
The
stupid.
Kaminoans.
Kaminoans, thank you. Wait, I was
Oh my
close.
goodness.
I was so close.
Wow.
Yes,
Even the most diehard fans get
right?
yeah,
There's so many words that aren't real words. You can only keep up so much.
that's right.
Sometimes you pull out a word and I was like, "Why did you remember that?"
You know.
Um,
No, even I fall off the wagon sometimes. Even I have my
yes.
faults.
Yeah, no, how it, like, followed through from the manipulation of Sifa Diaz and Dooku, which, like, he did simultaneously while he was still Plagueis's Padawan, and that followed through to make the clone army, to, like, to stealing the DNA of that, like, crazy force resistant monster, to just everything in the long run, that it was all about, so Plagueis couldn't figure out how to live forever, so it went from, "Okay, I can't manipulate the midichlorians to live forever, so how can I clone myself so that I can transfer my essence from body to body to body so that I can live forever that way?" Like, that was,
Mm,
like, all the manipulations, all of it was for that bigger plan. It was
yeah.
all in the pursuit of power, the endless pursuit of power.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that was always at the forefront of his mind. That's what all the manipulations were for. It's what the entire Clone Wars was for. It was just a step. It was just a step in the process.
It is the long game. It is
Ah,
totally the long game.
it
Can
is
can we
mind-blowing.
can we can we just do a redirect here
Yes,
and talk about Ahsoka's departure? Because
we have to.
when we talk about the arc of Anakin's rage and the stable influences that are part of his life, when Ahsoka gets pulled out, first of all, when the entire Ahsoka arc, which starts with the sabotage of the Jedi Temple, this is episode 17 of season 5, and the seeds get planted. First of all, you start seeing the seeds planted of the public turning against the Jedi because the Jedi are implicated. Thank you, Palpatine. The
Mm,
Jedi are implicated in the bombing at the Jedi Temple, which kicks off episode 17. And the episode starts off. It's a great arc, which ends in Ahsoka's departure from Anakin's life and from the Jedi Order. But the episode starts off where they go to Cato Nemoidia, where the Nemoidians are from, the Trade Federation, and Ahsoka saves Anakin's life. I mean, talk about indebtedness and this intense indebtedness to a person who's your advocate.
mhm,
Ahsoka saves Anakin's life. Anakin's going down in a Jedi starfighter. He's being swarmed by buzz droids. They're all over his ship. They're taking apart his engine. The engine's falling apart. The whole thing. And Ahsoka like jumps out of her Jedi starfighter, right?
mhm,
Jumps onto the top of his cockpit where Anakin has been knocked unconscious because of the jerky motion of his ship, and he gets knocked unconscious. Ahsoka like rips off the cockpit, gets him out of there. They dive to safety. He wakes up and he's like, "Wait, what happened? I thought I was flying the ship." And she's like, "Yeah, I saved you. It was no big deal." So
mhm,
like it starts off with that, like that he's already like indebted to her and the intensity of this relationship, and she's saved him. And then the bombing happens at the Jedi Temple. A rogue Jedi is implicated. There's a rumor that the Jedi are responsible for this. And the public, it's the first time you start seeing public demonstrations against, right, the war.
yeah,
And now you start seeing the public show up with, whatever, an anti-Vietnam protest looks like in the Star Wars universe. The public are showing up on the steps of, I don't know if they're on the steps of the Jedi Temple. I have to go back and watch, but they've got signs that are like, anti-clone, anti-war. They're obviously they're pissed off at the Jedi because they think that, rogue Jedi might have been implicated in this. And now it's starting to look like, oh, the Jedi are the warmongers. The Jedi are the bad guys. The Jedi are keeping the war alive. Palpatine is like, he has kept his hands clean of the whole thing. Now it's the Jedi that are causing all this chaos in the galaxy. And this is how it appears to the rest of the world outside of our little insular Star Wars universe. And, long story short, Ahsoka gets unfairly implicated in this plot by her one of her supposed best friends, another Padawan by the name of Barriss Offee. And Barriss Offee, who gets sucked into, this anti-war, anti-violence ideology against the Jedi Order, throws her best friend under the bus, and Ahsoka gets implicated in this thing. And Anakin, such a bro, goes to work to prove her innocence. I mean, yeoman's work here, goes down into the bowels of Coruscant, does investigative work, stands by her side. Even Rex is trying to hang in there and be loyal to Ahsoka, but she doesn't have a lot of allies at this point. Plo Koon, Master Plo, he seems to be on her side. Yoda's kind of like, Yoda's like, wow. I mean, for somebody who had such a great relationship with Ahsoka, Yoda, they just write Yoda to be like super passive throughout this arc. And the remaining Jedi Masters really don't come to Ahsoka's defense.
Right?
Like, there are no character witnesses on the Jedi Council that really step up and defend Ahsoka, regardless of how much good she's done over the last 4 years, except for Anakin. And Anakin really goes to town after she's saved his life. She's been his loyal Padawan. This is one of the most stable relationships in his life other than Padme. And when she is found guilty of her crimes, and Anakin, she's about to she's already been expelled from the Order at this point. The Jedi Council is basically they are down
Yeah.
the
They, like,
expelling her
had
from
their
the
own
Order.
little thing.
They have their own little thing. Mace Windu's totally behind it because it puts the Jedi Council in a stronger position. Mace will always do what is best for the Jedi Council.
Yeah.
And Mace throws Ahsoka under the bus, doesn't act as a character witness. He's totally down with it, whatever is necessary to protect the Jedi Council. And it's not until that last moment when Anakin comes to the rescue and saves Ahsoka at her trial that, all is revealed. You think Ahsoka's going to get her happy ending. She's going to come back to the Order. And granted, they had to write her out because of, Revenge of the Sith coming up, and you never hear Ahsoka mentioned in Revenge of the Sith. But the way they engineered her out was so tastefully done.
Yeah.
And done so well for Anakin's character arc to destroy this stable relationship that he had and just rip it away, even after he did everything right. Like, he did everything that you want a mentor to do in your life. He stood by his Padawan. He stood by his protege, and it wasn't enough. And isn't that it's another chink in Anakin's armor? He failed again. He failed to save his mother, right? He failed to, he got trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, right? Fails to save his mother, gets his arm cut off. All the trauma of being tortured and being put down, and he's a slave, and all these other things. And the one of the last two stable relationships, last three, it's Obi-Wan, Padme, and Ahsoka. But Ahsoka gets ripped away, and he's already on kind of thin ice with Obi-Wan, based on the deceptive things that Obi-Wan has done. But that's taken a toll, It's really taken a toll at this point. And it's such a heartbreaking episode when Ahsoka says, I'm done. They don't trust me, and I don't trust myself, and I've got to go.
Especially when he doesn't view like, he thinks, like, I did everything I could for Ahsoka, and, like, yeah, she's grateful that, like, obviously he exposed Barriss and was able to, like, save her in the 11th hour, but she didn't feel that. She's just like, "You didn't believe me." He's like, "Yes, I did." She's like, "No, you really didn't. Like, you weren't out there with me when I was trying to prove my innocence. Like, I was running from you just as much as everybody else." And so it's like, even though his point of view is like, "Oh, I was with you the whole time." She's like, "Yeah, but that's not how it actually was. Like,
Yeah.
just because that's your perspective doesn't mean that's how it was."
Now let's put it back in context with what Padme says. Ahsoka basically says to Anakin in a different way of saying it, I don't feel safe around you anymore.
Right?
Right? Which is what Padme actually says in the next season. I
Yeah.
don't feel safe around you anymore. And so, like, all these people now that are like, it's coming down to the wire, and all these people are just telling Anakin, you're not good enough.
Yep.
You're not good
You're
enough
not gonna
anymore.
like,
You're
you're not strong enough. You're
Yeah.
not enough to keep me safe. You're not enough to make me feel stable. You're not enough for me to stay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what Ahsoka says is like, you're not enough for me to stay." And he's like, I think about leaving the order." And she's like, "I know." And, like, that is just probably such a gut punch because it's like the person who probably knows him the best is just walking away.
Mhm.
And that beautifully lit scene at the perfect golden hour when she's walking off into the distance.
Oh,
Oh my
gorgeous.
god.
Yeah.
I can't
Heartbreaking.
imagine as a fan being left on that kind of cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I can't imagine it. What just happened? What just
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, that is one of the it's such a beautiful story. It's such a beautifully illustrated story, but it's also just such a beautiful addition to Anakin's arc.
Like, do you ooh, another what if moment. Another interesting what if. What if Ahsoka came back to the Order, but, like, had obviously this huge, like, grounding mistrust of the Council, and then when Anakin was being turned to the dark side, what if she's just like, "I'm gonna follow my master."
Mhm.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
Yeah, because they were so yeah, because
right, but
they
then what
just
happened?
blew it. They just
Right?
constantly blew it.
Then what happens to the rule of 2? Do they team up against Sidious to take him out, or does Sidious
Yeah.
order Anakin to, like, kill Ahsoka and he takes her out? Sorry, that's a really big what if. But
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, for sure. But they really took the time to destroy is too strong a word, but they really took their time over the course of the Clone Wars, and Episode 3 is really just a capstone
yeah,
to really just deteriorate every stable element within Anakin's life.
yeah.
And between planting the seeds of mistrust with the Council, with Obi-Wan, then now with Ahsoka. And even though Ahsoka does come back, now George Lucas is out at this point, but they do a Clone Wars season 7, which ends up being a great, precursor to Episode 3, the Mandalore arc, um, you know, Darth Maul's reintroduction into the series, Ahsoka, really becoming foundationally becoming a gray Jedi. And that season 7 arc where Ahsoka comes back and Anakin's like, he's like a puppy. He's just so like he just falls apart. Like Ahsoka, uh, he's like
Oh my
he's
god,
just
he's
the
so excited.
yeah, he's the opposite of what a Jedi, should be because Anakin and attachments just don't go very well together.
Yeah.
He really just falls apart and all he wants is this stable relationship back in his life again. And to memorialize that the stability of that relationship and just how badly he wants Ahsoka back in his life, he builds her 2 new lightsabers.
Oh, the
Oh.
lightsabers.
He builds her these 2 beautiful, right? These white lightsabers, right? They were white, right?
No, the handles are white, but no, they were blue.
Oh shoot! Now I've got to go back and look. I'm kicking
No,
myself.
I'm pretty positive mm, they turn white later because she turns them white.
Ah, got
She does something with purifying the kyber crystals, and that's why her lightsabers later are white. Um, but I don't remember what color they are, when she gets them. Wait, if I look at Ahsoka and if we look at the Darth Maul battle, what color are they there? Because 'Cause they're either blue, maybe they're green?
they're blue.
They're
Yeah,
blue. Okay,
they
they're blue.
actually are blue. You're right. You know, you're absolutely right.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Um, okay, yeah, no, she purifies the kyber crystals later, which turns them white, which makes them and they're the only white lightsabers, like, in, I think, any of the lore,
Yeah, yeah, you'll be right. They are blue at first, but like, what a gesture, right?
right?
And by the way, Ahsoka is now 17 at this point. We haven't even talked about Anakin's age. Anakin's 22 at this point. Ahsoka's is 17. She has fully left the order,
Yeah,
but now she has, this beautiful gift from Anakin, which is this grand gesture on his part to bring her back. Um, and
yeah,
it's heartbreaking is the wrong word. I mean, it's
yeah.
it's 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 a little desperate.
Yeah. But I do think wasn't she by the end, she was thinking about it. I think she had gone out in the world and she'd gone out in the world and kind of like figured herself out a little bit. And I think she was thinking about it because I think later she says something about like yet. Like, oh, like I don't know who says it. Maybe Yoda says something to her about, like, welcoming her back or, like, "Oh, Padawan Tano," or something, and she's just like, "Oh, not doing that, yet."
Mhm.
So I think she was thinking about it. Like, I think that when everything wraps up on Mandalore and she's bringing back Maul and all of that happens, like, she thinks she's going to see Anakin. Like, she thinks she's going to see him and maybe have a deep conversation, maybe come back after like she's thinking hard about like what her life has been on the ship deck with Rex in that scene right before like Order 66 happens and like there's so much to unpack there. But no, I think she was on her way back, I think, until
Mm,
it hit the fan.
yeah,
Um
yeah. It's
but
it's it's just such a great arc. It's really
yeah,
just such a great arc.
yeah, it's a lot, and then yeah, once she leaves, then that's when everything happens with Rush Clovis, and that's when his jealousy goes like off the scales, and that's when Padme like wants to take a break from him, and now he's extra alone because so first he lost his Padawan, and then his raging jealousy pushed his wife away, and so now he kind of like throws himself into work and at this point his his anger and really like his dark side tendencies are just raging. And there are examples of this in there are legends now because obviously everything that was canon got like retconned back to legends. Um and like there's just examples of him just like letting loose on bounty hunters and on separatists like opposition where it's like very violent and like Obi-Wan questions it like, oh, I can't just like we needed to interrogate that person and you just threw them into an explosion supernova, like
Yeah.
how is that helpful? Like I can't leave you to your own devices, like think you can control yourself. And Anakin's just like, I don't want to talk about it, or we talk about it later. And just like more dismissing his own behavior. People like I think Obi-Wan's probably the last person left who will call him out on things, but there's almost no room for it. There's no time for it. War is messy.
Yeah. Yeah,
War
no
is a
doubt.
messy thing.
Yeah.
And
But he's so broken by the time we get to the events of episode 3.
yeah.
He's just been put through such a ringer. Not, it's hard to be sympathetic toward Anakin Skywalker, but you understand his his fall to the dark side, because every stable element that was part of his life has been just, ripped away or tainted
Yeah.
at some point, right? Every
Yeah,
element
no.
has been tainted at some point.
Yeah, really, what does he like, by the time we get to the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, which I think we're firmly there. I would say we're firmly there. I mean, at this point, like, he's made back up with Padme, um, learns about the pregnancy, happy about that. Um, but we have well, really, like, we start out with the really one of the last steps to get him to fall to the dark side, is that in that battle at the opening of Revenge of the Sith when he offs Dooku.
Yeah. But by the way, let's just jump in the time machine a little bit. Revenge of the Sith comes out in 2005.
Yes.
Prior to that, we had Attack of the Clones. In between that, we had, a couple of comic books here and there that were being pumped out by, I think Dark Horse might have had the rights at that point, but not a lot of content. This is all still pre-YouTube too, right?
Exactly.
So the hype for Revenge of the Sith, I mean, that has been building since like 1977. And so when that film comes out, I'm just giving you the Gen X perspective on that film coming out. That was, that was like the mothership of moments that you want to see. You want to see the Anakin and Obi-Wan go at it, because you've been hearing about this duel for more than 20 years and you just can't wait to see it. But that opening sequence, I was rewatching Revenge of the Sith in preparation for today. And that first 15 minutes of that film, that is worth the price of admission all by itself. I mean, the aerial battle right out of the gate, brilliant. At Anakin, totally, on his game. This is where the fun begins. He's locked in. And he's not perfect, because even in the outset, his attachments still get the better of him, and he wants to go back and help the clones that are helping them in the firefight. And Obi-Wan's like, no, they've got their job to do, we've got our job to do, and we're going to stay on task. And even at the ripe old age of 22, he still needs Obi-Wan to be a grounding presence,
Yeah. Keep him
to
focused.
yeah, to keep him focused, exactly. And doesn't make the battle any less interesting. Makes it more interesting, because Anakin still ends up, saving Obi-Wan's life. And they make it onto the ship. But wow, like that, that's a breathtaking opening for that film. And eventually, yeah, his dispatching of Dooku is after you do need to watch the Clone Wars arcs where Anakin faces off against Dooku from the series, and then you get to the Revenge of the Sith, and then you're like, this is going to be good. You want to see that one-on-one fight between Anakin and Dooku, and the dialogue might seem a little clunky. My power has doubled since we last met Dooku. Twice the power, twice the pride, or something like that, or twice the pride, twice the fall, whatever Dooku says. But it's going to be a good fight. It's going to be a really good fight, and Anakin just wrecks him. And when he takes his head off after Palpatine's prodding, it's just like, you don't see that moment coming. Palpatine's just sitting back in his chair. Second time he's been kidnapped, by the way. The first time's in the Clone Wars arc, but Palpatine's just like, kill him. It comes out of nowhere. You're like, oh my God, like,
Right? Like,
kill
what?
him. And Anakin's not ready for it, but Palpatine knows right at that moment he's got
Yeah.
all the leverage.
Yeah.
He's too.
And that's what he needed. That was what he needed, is like when a master is like pushing an apprentice to really like to that point where they know that like they can fully get them to commit to the dark side. That's the thing they need, is that like, that act of violence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like for Palpatine, it was murdering his family. That was what pushed him over the edge, and this is what Palpatine knows Anakin needs to do in order for him to, like, work his way into his final manipulations, is you need
Yeah.
to one, like, this was the whole plan, like, you were always destined to dispatch of this guy, for me, who was kind of holding your place because you're going to be the next apprentice. Um, so he knows this. It's the he's pulling the strings. He's always pulling the strings.
Yeah. It's brilliant. It's just so brilliant. And Anakin gives into it. And Anakin's seen as a hero for doing that,
Right?
right? After that, it's not that Anakin gave into the dark side or Anakin gave into his hate. It's oh no, Anakin's a hero.
Right? You know
Anakin
what?
killed Dooku. It was as for all anybody knows, it was self-defense.
It makes me think of the point you made back in the first episode about how Anakin was a little kid and he took out that whole command ship, like, killed who knows however many, like, hundreds of, like, workers who worked on this ship when he accidentally took that starfighter up into space during the Battle of Naboo, and he was, like, a kid, and he was praised for, like, taking out this ship. So it's like, should you feel bad for, like, murdering like, committing this murder because it was for the greater good, or it was like, "Oh, but you were on the side of the good guy, so it's fine."
Yeah.
And it seems like the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. But the council doesn't even give him any recognition for it.
Nope, never.
Of all the things that Anakin's done,
That
right?
took out the separatist leader.
Yeah. He just took out Count Dooku. I mean, of all the heroic things he's done throughout the Clone Wars, and now this, and being the chosen one, they still won't give him the respect that he's earned. And it's just so debilitating.
Right?
You know, have we all been there where we've achieved that measure of success in our own mind, but nobody's validating it, and they just won't validate him anymore. And who,
I mean, at this point, maybe that's the accountability that we don't feel that he's getting in other areas. Maybe that's the accountability, like, we don't feel that people are holding him to. That might be it. It's like, "Okay, we're not gonna kick you out, but, like, we're still keeping you on a short leash."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
That might
and
be it, because once he's a master, he has access to ancient holocrons. He has really, like, more freedom to do what he wants, like, and they're like, "No, like, we can't just give you that. Like, you still need to be under Obi-Wan's tutelage. You still need to have certain limitations.
you need balance.
You need balance." He's like,
You're
"I am the balance. I am the chosen one."
yeah, yeah, and again, Palpatine knows exactly how to exploit that,
Yep.
right? And appoints him to the council, knowing full well the Jedi will never grant him the rank of master or trust him or
Yeah.
or give him the accolades that he's due. I love that scene. Anakin basically gets appointed, and Mace is the first one to step up. Not any other Jedi on the council,
No,
right?
gotta be Mace.
Daddy Mace is the first one to step and say, you sit on this council, but we do not grant you the rank of master. And
Right.
Anakin goes, 22-year-old Anakin goes full-blown petulant, like, what?
What?
This is disgraceful. You know, this is unfair. I mean,
Right.
he really goes into like tantrum mode. It's
Oh, big
very
tantrum mode.
yeah, the dialogue is very well thought out. He goes into full tantrum mode and then just sits there and sulks and who are we going to send to Utapau? We found out that Grievous is on Utapau. Or who are we going to send? The guy that just killed Count Dooku? No, we're going to send Obi-Wan
Nah.
for this one. Like, oh,
Alright, and then in the next beat gets axed, like, "So the council wants you to spy on Palpatine."
yeah, yeah. It's really if you just see it through the prism of Palpatine, just working every angle of this,
Yeah.
it's so perfectly done.
Just sitting there with that creepy, wrinkly old man smile, just like,
Yep,
"Yes, yeah,"
yep,
like tapping his fingers together, like, "Mm,
yeah.
my plans
If
are
only he had
falling
a
into place."
mustache to twirl. If only.
Oh my god, he would twirl the fuck out of that mustache all day long. Like, with the force too, so he wouldn't actually have to touch it.
That's
Like,
right, that's right. It would be a self-twirling mustache.
oh my god. Even when he rescued, like Palpatine was really trying to like go through the motions. Even after Anakin kills Dooku and Obi-Wan's like knocked out and they need to escape the ship. Palpatine's like, just leave him. Just leave him behind.
Yeah. Can I ask you though, we've barely talked about Padme. I mean, we've talked about her in the sense that she really comes to her senses and she puts Anakin in his place and she says, I don't feel safe around you. We need time apart. And then everything, he saves her life, and then everything is back to, it's
Yeah.
reset, right? But by the time we get to episode 3, it almost feels like on a rewatch that the maturity levels between Padme and Anakin are almost like flipped
Oh,
compared to what they
definitely.
were in episode 2. Palp
Definitely.
Padme is she's she's pliable, or maybe, I guess, you know, much less principled and much more
Yeah.
devoted to Anakin, rather than saying this is wrong, or I stand for the Republic, or and they cut out some scenes from episode 3 where she's actually planting the seeds of the rebellion
Yeah.
against Palpatine. I almost
There's
wish
such
they
good
left.
scenes.
And they really were, and I almost wish they left them in, but it slows the action down. But
But it would
that's
have
where,
been
like,
better character development for her.
yes, because you would have seen at least this smart woman who's conflicted
Yeah,
between her
'cause
duty to the Republic and her duty to her husband.
yeah,
But
no,
they
they sell her character development up the river.
Yeah, right. They cut that out, and she's just so, I hesitate to use the word simp, but she's kind of a simp.
No,
I
she
mean,
is. By the
right?
end of that, especially on a first watch for me, by the end of it, I was turning to my roommate who I was with, like, binging these movies with, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, "What's up with
What
Padme?"
happened?
'Cause,
Like,
like,
what?
she was a senator. She was the queen of her planet, and, like, now she is just, like, loosey goosey, like, whatever goes, whatever you say. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
do we it's not very feminist, but do we blame pregnancy hormones? Like,
Oh,
what?
so glad you said it first, because I didn't want to say it.
You're
I didn't
definitely
want
not
to.
allowed to say it first.
No,
No,
I didn't want to say it. No, I'm
like,
I swear I
just
didn't message you to say that. No, I really, I had the same thought. It's like, can I blame
yeah, like, is
hormones?
she right? Like, it's just like she's so happy and she's so idealistic, and she thinks like they're gonna go back and hide on Naboo and like no one's ever gonna know about the baby. She looks pregnant as hell. Does no one question
Oh,
who the
yeah.
father of the baby is? Like, hey, Senator Amidala's pregnant.
Yeah,
Huh?
she's
He's not
she's
married.
wearing her planet's version of a muumuu, for crying out loud. I mean, it is like, yeah, you could fit like 3 people in that thing.
Like, she went and, like, and it's not like she doesn't dress revealing sometimes. Sometimes she is in, like, very elaborate, but, like, also revealing clothing, and then now she's just wearing all these flowy muumuus, like, with a pregnancy glow, like, and it never comes up in
Oh,
conversation at
man.
all, like,
Yeah.
so until that one, like, cut scene with Obi-Wan where he's like, "Anakin's the father, right?" Like
Flowy moo. The term of the podcast is
Chloe
flowy moo.
Moo.
It's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's really, it's dispiriting, because here was this principled person from episode 2 whose loyalty to the Republic is rock solid. Her loyalty to her planet is rock solid. She's the one that stiff arms Anakin and says, "We can't do this." And she even gets, we get to the latter half of season 6 and the Clovis episodes where she says, "I don't feel safe around you." She not only says that, she says, "Our relationship is built on lies and deception."
Mm,
And that's a recipe for disaster. This is all going to fall apart if we keep going down this path. Where was that person in episode 3?
right? Like,
Because it's just gone.
she
Ah,
does have that one scene. It's one scene, and I can't remember if it was a deleted scene or not. It might have been because all her good scenes were deleted, where she does question Anakin, and it's after he's put on the council, doesn't get master, and he's with her, and he's bitching because he's always bitching about something, and she's just like, "Well, have you never questioned, like, the chancellor? Or, like, maybe this isn't such a bad idea for you to find out more about what he's up to?" Like, and I think it goes hand in hand with the scene of her, like, with, like, the beginnings of the rebellion, because it's her sitting here basically questioning, like, yeah, you don't find what, the chancellor's doing is suspicious, or maybe it's not such a bad idea to question some things. Like, have you ever wondered, like, if what we're working against is, like, what's in place right now?
Yeah.
And, no, I don't remember if that made it into the film or if it's a deleted scene, but the scene exists
Mm,
where she's basically, like, questioning what the chancellor is doing right along with the council.
mm.
And he's just like, "And, like, you don't know what you're talking about." Murmur, and I think it starts to plant a few seeds of doubt for him, but I think he's already so clouded by his desire to save her that he, like, doesn't see anything else.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, it's such a turnaround. It's just such a it's such a weird
Yeah.
turnaround.
She doesn't get a lot of redeeming moments, and then she dies, a broken heart. It's
Yeah,
ugh, God, Padme,
yeah.
what happened?
We're so disappointed.
So disappointed.
How many, by the way, do you know how many days pass in the span of episode 3? How many
Mm,
days or weeks?
I don't.
Because I'm jotting down all these events, and I was writing down all these events, and I mean, look, Anakin has more than enough trauma from just being a couple of years uh, post Attack of the Clones to justify falling to the dark side. But he is there's such a compressed period of events
Damn.
that he
According
makes such poor decisions because of everything just being piled on top of one event after the other event
Yeah.
after the other event.
According to Screen Rant, which, I consider to be a pretty decent source, in Revenge of the Sith, there are few clear signs of how much time has passed, and the event of the film spans 4 days. The Battle of Coruscant, Count Dooku's death, Anakin and Obi-Wan saving Palpatine all happen in one day, with Anakin having his first vision of Padme dying during childbirth that night. The second day consists of Anakin getting his assignment to spy on Palpatine and concludes with the legend of Darth Plagueis the Wise speech at the opera. Day 3 begins with Obi-Wan being sent to find General Grievous, which includes Order 66, and ends with Anakin arriving on Mustafar. And then day 4 begins with Palpatine's Senate speech declaring the end of the Republic and concludes with Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting on Mustafar.
Wow.
Damn.
I didn't even think it was that
Right?
little
4
time.
days.
Yeah, I thought it was like maybe like 2 or 3 weeks, but it's like 4 days. So, what kind of qualitative decisions are you going to make in a 4-day span where, you've cheated death, you've killed your nemesis, your wife is pregnant, you've been kneecapped by the council, your mentors don't believe in you any longer,
And suddenly you had this seed planted of, hey, that biggest fear you have of your wife dying? How would you like to be able to stop that?
yeah, 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 right.
I
So
also am the Sith Lord you've been looking for.
right, and Palpatine reveals himself as the Sith Lord, which is amazing because Anakin actually lets him live upon learning that, right?
Right?
It
And,
basically
like,
says, "Well, I'm going to go back and report this to the council," and Palpatine's like, "Oh, do what you got to do,
do
but
what you
I'm the
gotta
only one that's
do.
going to save your wife." So, and
Yeah,
then
think
and then
think about that. Like,
and that is the only time. It is the only time in the last however many years Anakin's been a Jedi where Mace says, "I appreciate what you've told me, and if you can just keep your ass planted here while I go off and kill the Sith Lord, you'll have my trust." It's the only time Mace Windu ever decides to finally
okay.
give
Like, all right,
Anakin his
maybe I can fuck with this kid.
yeah, yeah. Maybe, you know what? All right, you've done well. Good job, Skywalker. I've only known you for a decade, but you know what? Now I'll trust you because you've outed the Sith Lord to me.
Mhm.
And there's our third what if. What if Anakin never goes to the temple?
Right?
to stop Mace from
Would
killing
Mace
Palpatine.
Windu have been powerful enough to kill Palpatine all on his own?
Mace would have killed Palpatine. Mace had him
I
dead to
mean, may
rights.
I mean, maybe though. I mean, but think about how powerful Palpatine was, like being the Sith Lord that he was. Like, I don't know. What do you like Palpatine faked being weak because he
Right.
knew Anakin was there and like needed
Right.
to like set that all up. Like
Exactly.
if Palpatine was fighting all out, like, oh, like Mace Windu's not about to take me out, I'm gonna take him out.
Yeah.
Like, would Mace Windu have been able to kill Palpatine? I
I
mean, he was very powerful, but think about Yoda wasn't able to kill Palpatine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think Mace was about as cutthroat as they come. I think Mace would have had the stones to do it.
Hmm.
I absolutely think he would have had the stones to do it. I think Yoda was much more I'm not saying Yoda was holding back, but it ends up being a not so fair fight with, with Palpatine throwing
Maybe.
Senate platforms at Yoda, and Yoda just says, "I can't do this anymore."
Right? I mean, also Yoda at this point knows like the Jedi Order's falling. He's 900 years old. He's tired. Um,
Wow.
maybe Mace Windu maybe a little more like chutzpah, a little more lead in his pistol.
Yeah, it's God, it's just so great. It is just so great. I would have liked to have seen that. I would have liked to have seen that what if story.
Right?
Um,
That would have been good.
that definitely would have been good. But
Um,
for Anakin to fall at that point,
it's it's so much. And like even I always think back to like the Darth Plagueis speech, like when he's telling him about him. And just like what could have been going through his mind of like I don't know, of like just the possibilities of like, oh, like I can cheat death, I can save my wife, like I can do this impossible thing. And I know that it's wrong, but it's like just like before, like the ends justify the means. It's like, yes, like this isn't wrong, and yes, like, oh my god, this is the Sith Lord, but I have to be able to save this thing that I love. I can't lose again. I
yeah,
can't lose like I lost my mom. I can't lose like I lost Ahsoka. Like I can't lose Padme on top of everything else.
yeah, yeah. And it's at that moment though that that he's under Palpatine's thrall. Everything that Palpatine has worked toward, now it's all come to fruition, right? Every seed he planted, every moment he manipulated. I'm going to have a more powerful apprentice now, a younger
Right,
apprentice,
younger.
right? And he gets exactly what he wants, and he sends Anakin off to the temple to straight up just murk everybody in the temple, even the kids.
Yep. Oh,
And
the Youngling Slayer
oh,
3000 comes to strike.
seriously. And then, that's what desperation will make you do. This is the ultimate, you know, this ultimately amplifies what desperation will make you do. And with desperation and toxic love in an unhealthy relationship, what it will make you do.
Yeah.
You'll kill your colleagues, your children, the children, students, just to, I mean, the
Right.
enormity of that atrocity is just, I don't know how Anakin thinks this is gonna end
I mean,
well,
do we
you know?
categorize it as a crime of passion?
Oh, it's just, well, it's so,
Is it?
it's how much of, but he's under Palpatine's influence at this point. And so for Palpatine
But even at
to
this point, because when he confronts Obi-Wan later, which I mean we'll backtrack to the points leading up to that. When he confronts Obi-Wan later, he does say, like, I'm more powerful than the Chancellor. Like, I can like we can dispose of him, like join me.
right.
Like to Obi-Wan, join me and we can take him out. So he like it's not like he's completely rose-colored glasses about the situation. He knows he has to leave the Jedi behind, but he knows that the Sith is evil. He knows that the Chancellor's evil, but it's a means to an end. It's like, okay, I need him to teach me how to save Padme, and then like I can dispose of him.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll say this about Palpatine is that Palpatine's influence through the dark side is ever present throughout the first trilogy. Right? This malevolent presence that controls an empire
Yeah.
is very powerful. And when he dies, there's a lot of fan theories about this, but there's this theory that when Palpatine dies and the empire just disintegrates after that. Okay, Robot Chicken again, like
Mhm.
brilliant Robot Chicken sketch. Oh, the Death Star is destroyed. Well, why don't we regroup and fight back? Nope, nope, nope. We're over. Fight's
We're
over.
done.
The Empire's lost. We're all done. But seriously, Palpatine has such force of will over the Empire that he's able to cast, his presence, his influence through the dark. This is my take on it. That he's able to cast his influence through the dark side of the Force to control the galaxy. To leverage the dark side of the Force to not only control, Anakin, but to control the masses. And so for Anakin to fall under the pall of the dark side, which is always spoken about in nebulous terms, the dark side clouds everything. The dark, right? I could see Anakin in that moment just being so compromised and so susceptible to the dark side's influence that I don't think you can fairly call it a crime of passion.
Mm.
Which is why I think Anakin, he sheds a tear later on in episode 3. You see him crying on Mustafar. You see, his eyes have turned Sith yellow. You see him crying because he knows what he's lost while
Yeah.
being under Palpatine's influence and thrall. I mean, and you can debate it. I mean, you can debate it one way or another, whether or not he was solely responsible for his actions. Darth Vader didn't. Darth Vader made me do it. There it is.
Right.
Did Darth Vader make me do it? Did Darth Vader make me commit all these atrocities in the name of, what is it again? Hegemonic masculinity?
Yes.
Did Darth Vader make him do it?
Or was it who he was all along?
Or was it who he was all along? These are great existential questions we should be asking
Like,
ourselves about
and
the character of
then
Anakin Skywalker.
there's always the concept of like imagine all the atrocities that he committed, like just the failure of his relationship with Obi-Wan and like the killing of the children and the slaughtering of the Jedi and like killing Mace Windu would have been this horrible psychotic break.
Yeah.
Could have been this horrible psychotic break, and then Darth Vader could just be like a split personality disorder.
Yeah.
Like you had a psychotic break, and I mean, your mind will do incredible things to save you from yourself. And that's really what split personality disorder is you as you can't handle it. And so your psyche develops this whole other personality in order to shield that.
Mm.
And so did Darth Vader come in and however you want to say it, save him, kill him, because you have like moments like in the Obi-Wan series where you had this duality, that scene between, which is like my favorite scene in Star Wars, hands down, no contest, of Obi-Wan versus Anakin on that little asteroid. That they really could have put that in a more descriptive place. But the part where Obi-Wan like breaks open his mask and he's speaking with Anakin,
Mm.
and he's just like, I am not your failure, Obi-Wan. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did.
Mm.
Ugh. I could watch that scene 10,000 times over and still get choked.
That was a highlight of that series.
Oh my god. That
And
was
the
so good.
and the lighting
The lighting,
showing the
with the
red,
blue and the
blue,
red.
red,
Oh my
blue,
god.
red, blue, and it keeps alternating back
So
and forth.
good. And just
Yeah.
the voice and everything. Bravo. Hayden Christensen, bravo.
Yeah.
Um, and just that duality between like the moments of like where Anakin says, "I am not your failure, Obi-Wan." And then Vader says, "You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker, I did."
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
like Anakin like made all the decisions that led up to Vader, but then is Vader the same person? I personally think no, but there's also a lot of nuances with the dark side that I firmly believe in. So it's a
Yeah.
complex question.
It is a complex question. And I think for Anakin, if you really stop and think about redemption, and does Anakin deserve redemption after all he's done? Does he deserve redemption for killing Palpatine? does he deserve being welcomed back into the Force after killing Palpatine?
Right? I mean, he makes it into the cosmic force, like, he's the
He
force
does,
ghost.
he does. He
He
he makes
does,
he makes it in he makes it into the afterlife. He makes it into, being as, watching over Ahsoka. I can't wait to see where that goes,
right?
continuing to be a mentor to Ahsoka. 40-year-old Ahsoka
Right?
had her own trippy visions
Right?
on death's door. And I
Yeah.
love that they brought that Anakin back.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
brought that
yeah, that was
Anakin back who is straddling, the light side and the dark side to teach Ahsoka a lesson about herself.
right?
Was
Yeah,
such
no,
a
that's brilliant
genius.
choice. Brilliant
Yeah.
choice.
Great stuff. And peak Vader comes back to I saw a comment on a thread recently. It's like, the galaxy dodged a bullet when it was spared from, peak Darth Vader before he was, decapitated and beat up on Mustafar.
Yeah,
But
no,
that's
imagine if, like, yeah, Anakin didn't need the Vader costume and everything, and it was just him, just badass as anything, like
yeah, yeah. Just great, great stuff. But I don't know. I don't know that he's that's one I want to ruminate on a little bit, and
yeah,
whether or not he's entitled to redemption after all that horrible stuff that he's done. Would we allow somebody to be redeemed, if it was like Ted Bundy, or if it was someone who had done like all
right?
these unspeakable atrocities, or
Yeah,
you
because
know
his journey isn't linear. Like, as like Vader will get examined in his trilogy arc, in the future, like Vader commits some atrocities. Even like if the whole time he is completely mistrustful of the Emperor, even if the whole time he is so remorseful, like he doesn't get the bigger picture till the very end. Like he doesn't get it. Like Luke doesn't come into the picture until he's like what 18.
Mhm. Right.
Like, so that's almost 20 years of just, like, rampaging evil,
Yeah.
of just, like, being the biggest dick in the galaxy, like,
Yeah, for sure.
just being, like, the jet like, the force-powered watchdog of the Emperor, and I mean, being tortured, like, it wasn't like he had a happy 20 years, but, like, he certainly spent it hunting down other Jedi, like, taking other Force-sensitive children, turning them into Inquisitors, like, murdering lots of people, blowing up planets, like,
Yeah.
at no point was he, like, a nice guy until he kind of realized, "Oh, I might kind of love my son. Maybe I should overthrow the Emperor." Like, 20 years later. Like
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to
like, he
it's
blew up his daughter's home planet.
yeah.
Gave no fucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's like I mean, we all love, like, a redemption arc in the end. Like, who doesn't love that? It's very orthodox. It's very, very Christian to be redeemed. Um, but I mean, did he deserve it? It needed to happen for the sake of the Force because he was still the chosen one meant to bring balance to the Force, and that's what he did.
Right.
But does that mean that he deserves our forgiveness?
Mm.
But it really and I was thinking about it earlier, it really speaks to the whole concept of rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Think about, like, someone who's in prison for committing a crime. Like, we say that they serve their time and they depending on what it was, of course, like, that's a wide stance with the justice system. Say it's a I don't know, something like manslaughter, violent, but, like, not murder, maybe. Like, they serve their time, they get out, and they are, quote, unquote, "rehabilitated." Like, do we let them back into society without any sort of, like, reservations? Like, do we forgive them for their crimes? What's the process? What's the line in the sand? Like,
Mm.
it's a lot of ethical questions, a lot of philosophical questions.
Well, this is Star Wars. So, unlike real life, where there really are consequences for actions that would be so horrible
Yeah.
and unspeakable, I think in the Star Wars universe, redemption is going to continue for Anakin. And you can agree or disagree with that. I think we're all rooting for Anakin. We're all rooting for Anakin's redemption. But what I would like to see outside of the realm of real life, if Anakin were to truly be redeemed, that killing Palpatine isn't enough, and that he really needs to spend the rest of his time as an element of the Force, or as a Force ghost, or an influence on Ahsoka, to continue redeeming, all the horrible things that he did. And can he still do that as Ahsoka's mentor? And I'll be interested to see what they do with that. Like, Ahsoka, at this point, and you can't talk about Anakin without talking about Ahsoka and his influence on Ahsoka, is will he continue to exert influence over Ahsoka's decisions? Will he reveal himself to Ahsoka
Right?
in future seasons? And there's a Mind the Force podcast that's probably going to be out 2 or 3 years from now that will analyze all of that when Ahsoka season 2 comes out,
Oh my gosh.
and whether or
Can't wait
not
to do an Ahsoka episode one day.
right, and whether or not Anakin continue to exert his influence and redeem himself. But boy, that's got to be some interesting territory to trot over, and I hope they do. I really hope they do. Um, I come down on the side of, if we're putting a capstone on all of this, I come down on the side that Anakin was fated to just be a tragic figure,
Yeah.
and he never got a fair deal, and for all the horrible things that he did, he was, certainly a victim of being manipulated by Palpatine. He was a victim of circumstance. He was, a victim of the Jedi Council not believing in him, and I think he was just fated to be a villain. A reluctant villain, but still a
Yeah.
villain. And I know that gets back to the, Darth Vader made me do it theme, but this is epic stuff, like on this much of an epic scale.
All right.
Um,
It's very, it's almost like you said, like the fates of destiny. Um I saw so many comparisons to Anakin across like different academic papers, whether it was to Satan or there was one to Oedipus Rex, and
mm,
just like you said, the tragedy of destiny. Like you were just dealt hand after hand that just put you in a certain direction that just crushed you. Like
yeah, yeah.
like, did you ever stand a chance? Like, are we like it's the difference in the Devil and Anakin Skywalker paper, who I would like to credit the author because it was such a good paper and you should always cite your sources. Always cite your sources, people. Um Sean L. Tickle. That's a fantastic name.
Mm,
That's a fantastic name, Mr. Tickle. Yes, the Devil and Anakin Skywalker. He talks a lot about the the God's plan versus human free will, and how there is a plan for all of us that like God lays out, but like every human has free will, the free will to defer from that plan and choose the path of evil.
yeah, yeah. It right, and he could have made that choice, right? Would make for good Star Wars, but he
Would
could
not
have
make
made
good
that
Star Wars.
he could have made that alternate choice, and he could have, been a more responsible
Mm.
person, or a better husband, a better Jedi. Um, but yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the next few years will bring. And at a meta level, I mean, or at a more practical level, I'm really glad that Hayden Christensen has sort of been brought back into the universe to play that character, because I think there's still a lot more story to tell there.
There's so much more story to tell. Like, I feel like every
Yeah.
character in Star Wars needs like a fleshed out story because the meat and potatoes is there.
Yeah.
Like the foundation is there. Like my personal one that I will always throw my hand in the air for is there needs to be I feel like they could probably do it with a novel or even a short comic series run. They need to retcon Riva Savander's story
Mm.
because that I think is one of the most epic stories I've ever heard.
Yeah, how did she
What?
climb out of that,
Oh my
that
god,
pit
like
of despair, right?
oh my god, like, I feel like there was so much going on that needed to happen in the Obi-Wan series that to throw that kind of crazy storyline in the middle of it was just never going to get the proper time.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's like, what? Like, not the surviving Padawan from the Order 66 Youngling massacre
yeah.
is found on the streets, taken in by the Sith Inquisitorius, and, like, spends her life's journey fallen to the dark side, in the influence of the dark side full on, with the full intent of hunting Darth Vader to avenge the falling Jedi younglings. Like, what?
Mm,
What? And to,
yeah,
like, rise through the ranks, and then the whole time, like, he knows, like, what? Ah,
yep.
that's just amazing storytelling.
And by the way, there is a Riva action figure already. Thank you
Or
very
as there
much.
should be, as there should
Yes.
be. Not quite enough Riva cosplays. I
Yeah,
think I was the first Riva cosplay. I'll put that here now on the internet, that I was the first Riva cosplay
So proud of
at
you.
a major comic book convention.
Take that. Take that,
And
fandom.
yes, I have since seen better Riva cosplays. There was one at San Diego Cosplay. Like, thankfully, I was not in my costume that day. I dressed up the next day. I saw her and I was so happy I was not in mine because she put me to shame. I wish I knew who this cosplayer was. She looked absolutely glorious.
Really.
Tall, beautiful, dark skin, the hair was right, the costume looked so professional. I was like, "Oh my god, she looks great."
Yeah, there's some hardcore folks out there. Yeah.
Oh my god.
I
Shout
love
out
it.
to the cosplayers. I'm
Wow.
always here for
Wow.
it.
Yeah, there's
Um,
there's more of a there's definitely more of a story to tell there, and I hope they tell it.
alright. Um, but what are our final thoughts on Mr. Skywalker as we look at his last moments?
Ah,
You
you
know,
know,
he's I mean, are we talking to talk about his final force choke
yeah, I know.
of
Oh
his
my
wife?
god. Force chokes his wife. Good lord. I
Oh,
know this
because
this is right. I
let's
mean,
right, because
yeah.
let's not forget that he, in his complete psychotic break tangent of everyone is against me except the chancellor, now she thinks that Obi-Wan is, like, sleeping with Padme.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because he saw Obi-Wan in the fever dream, he saw Obi-Wan over Padme's body
Yes.
during the dream. So yeah, he doesn't know who to trust. He doesn't know who to believe.
Yep.
Um,
Turned her
oh
against
yeah.
me.
Yeah, you've turned right. Right. Either you're with me or you're against me.
Right, and she shows
Um,
up to try on this mysterious planet, which makes me wonder how far Mustafar is from Coruscant. Must not be that far.
it's
She
in
got
the
there
outer
pretty
rim.
fast.
I think it's in the outer rim.
Wow, that was a really fast hyperspace jump.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's supposed to be out there.
right?
Yeah, I'll triple check that, but I'm reasonably certain that Mustafar is an outer rim
Yeah.
planet. But it's just look, once you've hit rock bottom, once you've committed the atrocities that he's committed, what's force choking your wife in the grand
Right?
scheme of
At this
things?
point,
You
you've gone
know?
pretty far past the line. The
Yeah,
line is
yeah,
blown.
yeah. He's already
Yeah.
at bottom. I mean, at
And
this point.
even think about, like a real adult tantrum. Like, you'll rage against everyone. Like, if you've really lost your temper to that point and you're in a mindset where it's, I'm trying to think of what, like, very professional terms would be. It'd be like a fight or flight, or it would be just a complete breakdown of any sort of emotional trusting, where you're almost like a caged animal where everyone is your enemy.
Yeah.
And that's where he is in that moment, where he's like, "You're with me or you're against me." Like, "Oh, Obi-Wan, you're not gonna join me? Okay. Padme, like, you're trying to also talk me off the ledge? Alright, then you're against me too."
Right. Right. And that is, is it Anakin or is it
Right? Is it
Palpatine?
right? Right? Is it? I mean, he's Vader at this point. He's been dubbed Vader, or he's been like knighted as Vader. I don't think he doesn't have Sith eyes at this point. Those don't come in until the end of his battle with Obi-Wan. Um yeah, but it's something that definitely can't be ignored.
Yeah.
It's I mean, it's this rage, and I think just at this point, just the level of like personal disappointment, like point of no return. Like he's definitely past the point of no return. And like I might as well I'm just gonna blow it all up.
Yep.
At this point, like there's no at this point he must feel like there's no redemption for me. He's killed the younglings at this point. So I can imagine like he's just on 100% adrenaline, like fueled by the dark side, fueled by regret and sadness. Probably every bad feeling he's ever had
Hmm.
is just raging, like from his mom to everything that happened with that to all the rage from the war to the betrayal of the council to every bad feeling he's ever had
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
multiplying by 1,000 and under the weight of the dark side. Because that's what the dark side feeds off of is the hatred. It's just multiplying it by 1,000, and this is where we find ourselves
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
end of episode 3.
And Palpatine feels him getting hurt through the Force. Something's happened to Lord Vader.
Yes.
Daddy's feeling it. Daddy's feeling the pain.
Yes. I actually oh my god. Oh, I meant to save this. I saw amazing fan theory on when Palpatine finds Anakin on the beach as if he is like pulling like life force from him. As if he's like taking like even more of like Anakin's life force for himself.
Mm, mm.
I will have to find it and send it to you. It was an excellent fan theory, and I was like,
Yeah, that's good stuff.
"Ooh."
That's
It was
good
like
stuff.
along those lines of like when he's there and he's on the beach of like Palpatine doing something to him.
Yeah.
Um that like made no, no. Oh, and it had to do something with Padme's dying. It had to do something with like instigating Padme's death. Oh, I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna find it
Mm,
afterwards and send it to you. It was very good.
that's
It
good
was
stuff.
very good. Like it's definitely in relation to pulling life force from Anakin and like something in relation to like causing Padme's death.
Hmm.
Mm.
Oh yeah, this so we're not going to get into it here in depth, but yeah, the things that Palpatine does to Vader after he becomes Vader, fully becomes Vader, are just horrible.
Oh, absolutely
He
horrible.
keeps him in the armor to keep him in pain, wants him to, constantly hate himself and feel horrible about himself and keep his connection to the dark side, but that's the way of keeping him under control. I mean, yeah, oof,
Yeah. No,
there's
the
there's a
Vader
whole
episodes are gonna get dark.
yeah. Yeah, I know there's a lot of intense stuff to
Yeah. So
data to
like
mine there.
yeah. And then I mean it'll be a question of then does he earn his redemption? Does he pay for the things he's done?
Right.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
Food for
And where
thought.
does Ahsoka play into that?
Right? Uh,
Does Ahsoka, as an extension of his teachings, does Ahsoka play into his redemption?
mm.
Do Ahsoka's actions redeem him? And what she ends up doing for the galaxy. I don't know. These are the unknowns, right? We're not sitting in the writer's room.
Right? Like does Ahsoka's actions redeem him? Do Luke's actions redeem him?
Yeah. I mean, I know it's like I know we haven't even talked about Luke. Oh my goodness.
Mm. So many questions.
But let's just be 100% clear, okay? Been a lot of talk about who's the chosen one here. Can we just say definitively at the close of this episode, Anakin was the chosen one? And it
Yes.
wasn't Luke, and it's not Ahsoka, and it isn't Ezra. The chosen one was the chosen one, and there's no gray area around that.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, but there's been some scuttlebutt about that, who is who
There'll
isn't.
always
Ah,
be.
you know, they're just trying to pick up on Anakin's mojo, so
Right? There's another fantastic video I'm going to send you of, Robert Downey Jr., the voice of Mr. Kanan Jarrus, um, definitively saying what Star Wars is. It's a fantastic clip.
Oh, you mean Freddie Prinze.
Yeah. What did I say?
You said Robert Downey Jr., but that's pretty fun.
Wrong.
Like that.
God. Wrong one. Freddie Prinze Jr. Yes.
Yeah.
If either of them ever hear this, I'm gonna get trolled one day if I haven't
Oh,
met
that's right, he is a junior. That's right, he was Freddie Prinze's son. I forgot about that.
them. Yes, Freddie Prinze Jr. Just completely definitively saying what Star Wars is, what the intention of Filoni and George Lucas is for Star Wars. It's hysterical.
Nice. Nice.
No, I definitely agree. Anakin, definitively the chosen one, and all of the complicated things that come with that.
Nice. Well, I just want to express my gratitude because I think you should always close with gratitude. But I have to express my gratitude for being not only invited to this podcast that you've built through your passion and your love for this franchise, but being reintroduced to these characters and reevaluating them from soup to nuts, and even the Mace Windu's of the world, and the Yodas of the world, and all the others, and really getting into a deep dive reevaluation of all their intentions, and their part in Anakin's story. And it is fun to go down that memory lane. It really is for the hardcore fan. It's really enjoyable to just remember all those nights that I spent watching Clone Wars with my kids growing up when they were in grade school, and how much of an event that was, and how much those movies were just events. In 1999 and 2002 and in 2005, and that original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, epic stuff, just so great, and will be with us for decades, if not hundreds of years. I hope in 100 years we're still talking about Star Wars. It's just so Shakespearean in its scope and scale, and to make it relevant as you're doing for a contemporary audience through the prism of mental health, I think is just absolutely brilliant. And I can't wait until the evaluation, the next episode, the 6th episode, that delves into this story arc of Anakin's for this period of time.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate that. I could not have picked a better co-host to launch this off with. Just your love and passion and knowledge of the franchise and the content just has been an invaluable resource. I feel like I've
Oh,
learned so much
oh,
over the past
my
few weeks
pleasure.
that we've been doing this.
My pleasure.
And
But even
I
the
mean,
best of us fans forget Kaminoans.
right? All those Kaminoans, they're an oceanic
I,
race.
I can say Nemoidian like it rolls off the tongue. I forgot Kaminoan. I'm gonna have a hard time forgiving myself for that one.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what? It can't be perfect.
It
Can't be
happens.
perfect all the time.
It happens.
But Matt, this has been an unprecedented delight.
Awesome. I'm so glad we did a trilogy style.
Right? Trilogy series for the win.
Going out like a boss.
All right. And this brings us to the fateful end of Mr. Anakin Skywalker's story, to be continued with a certain Darth Vader and his journey through the dark side and beyond.
Nice.
Until next time, Matt.
Until next time. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Bye. No, Anakin, you were the chosen one. Do try not to fret too hard on this one, people. We still have one more teeny tiny installment on our tragic protagonist before we can bring him to a close. Well, it won't be teeny or tiny, but it will be exciting, I promise. Thank you to Matt for being the best co host a girl can ask for. I must warn my future co hosts now that a very high bar has been set. Y'all better come correct with your nerdy fandom knowledge. Shit, I better come correct with my nerdy fandom knowledge. Matt, you are a gentleman and a scholar, and your love of all things Star Wars is truly unparalleled. You'll be missed, but who knows? Maybe you'll wander back into this system before we have a chance to miss you too much. What do you guys think of Anakin's fall to the dark side? Share your thoughts with me at mindtheforcepodcast@gmail.com. If there's one thing all Star Wars fans have, it's opinions on the duel on Mustafar. So let's get into it. I want to hear all about it. And don't forget to follow up on all socials and check us out on your favorite podcast streamers. If you like what you hear, do us a huge solid and drop us 5 stars. It really makes a big difference, and I value my lovely listeners very much. Now, on the next episode of Mind the Force, we have our final condition assessment of Anakin, where I get a professional opinion on Anakin's fateful choices, and it should be quite a doozy. I'm Kristine McPartlin, and that concludes this episode of Mind the Force. See you next time, and stay mindful.